I find that most Americans tend to be very, very elitist and spoiled. And I'm just going to say it tends to be young people associated with the left. There's something about conservatives where they're more individualist and the left is more collectivist. And there's something about growing up in a city that makes people just assume there are things there for them. So, I lived in the far off wilderness in the middle of nowhere. I've also traveled the world and looked at some of these countries. And in my opinion, I think Republicans, people who live in rural areas have less to rely on. There's not going to be as many police around. It's much harder to go to the store to buy what you need. Whereas when you're in a city, you can walk 10 feet out of your apartment and there's a bodega, like a corner store, and it's really easy and there's cops everywhere. So that's where I think a lot of the difference in understanding of the world comes from. So naturally, because of this, people who are in the middle of nowhere have to rely on themselves more often because there's less people around. And people in cities can rely on others much more often. So then you end up with urban people being more likely to be socialist, etc., etc. So here I have this tweet from Mr. Charlie Kirk, founder and president of TP USA. Was it Talking Points USA? Maybe I'm wrong. He said, "Every college socialist should be encouraged to live under a Marxist regime for 6 months. Would love to see the Bernie bros try and survive in Venezuela without running water, food, shelter, or Wi-Fi. Socialism sounds great till it kills you and your family." And he got 7,000 retweets on this. Why? Well, because conservatives probably got a kick out of it. But you know what? The left, just whoosh, going straight over their head, well, they like socialism. And a lot of them don't know what socialism is. I was talking to my friend just the other day who thought socialism is social democracy. Bernie Sanders is not a socialist, or maybe for the most part he's not. He is a social capitalist. And this usually refers to countries like Scandinavia, where they have a strong welfare system, but they are not socialist. Well, a lot of people think he is. And so they think they're socialists and then literally advocate for the democratic socialists of America that don't want borders and don't want profits. If there are no profits, that literally means you are not entitled to the fruits of your labor. That means you will do work and they will take it from you and give it to someone else. Most people don't agree with that. But now they think they do because they think they're socialists. Look, it's one thing to levy a tax, but to varying degrees. If we take literally everything from you that you produce, that's socialism or communism, depending on your government. And if we tax you, that could be social liberalism or social democracy. But let's take a look at how the left responded to Mr. Charlie Kirk. Natalie Holm Ellsberg, 23,000 retweets, and she said, "Every capitalist should try living under $7.25 an hour minimum wage in the USA for 6 months." And this was in response to Charlie Kirk. This is just so ridiculously ignorant, okay? She added, "Since this took off, I'm dropping this by Matt Brunig. Headline is that housing is unaffordable to minimum wage earners in every state in the country." Right. Oh, let's just debunk this silly notion. Look, what Charlie Kirk said, I understand, right? There's some logic here. Venezuela is socialist. Some people have said, no, but they're social democracies like Bernie Sanders advocates for. No, they've seized the means of production in their oil companies, and many other companies have been seized and nationalized. So they are crossing over into socialism, right? Everything's got nuance. Socialism is when the public seizes the means of production. So Venezuela isn't 100% socialist, but they are, because they've nationalized a bunch of their industries. And that's led to a massive economic screw-up for their country. But I understand what he's saying. He's like, if you want Marxist, socialism, go to a socialist country like Venezuela without running water. Yes, people are starving. They're eating animals out of zoos and bashing cows in open fields. Now, what Natalie Holm Ellsberg said literally makes no sense. And it makes no sense for one reason. And I'm going to debunk the next thing she posted. I'll go through her thread. But let me pull up this here article from Reuters. Venezuela raised its minimum wage, this is from April, to 1 million bolivars per month on Monday, the third increase this year that puts the figure at just $1.61 per month. Per month. Okay. So I did some math. $7.25 per hour, 40 hours per week, and you get around $1,600. That means she is asking people, in trying to refute a claim by Charlie Kirk, she's asking people to live on a salary that is 720 times higher than the average Venezuelan income, than the minimum, than the minimum. Okay, you are not refuting Charlie Kirk, you're proving his point. The minimum wage in the United States at $7.25 an hour is 720 times higher. 720 times higher. You know what that means? It means a Venezuelan would have to work 720 times the hours to earn what an American earns. You want to say that housing isn't affording? Well, sure. Let's talk about this. For 6 months, okay. I'll get into that, but let me just point out, I lived on less than minimum wage in this country. And I have seen other countries. I have seen Brazil, where the per capita GDP is like $8,000, all right? The minimum wage in the United States is higher than the per capita GDP of Brazil. Like the average income that a person makes is like $8,000. And then minimum wage here. Minimum wage, most people aren't even making minimum wage. Even if you work at McDonald's, you're gonna get like $10 an hour, $12 an hour. But okay, her point is about minimum wage. I've lived on less than that because I was busking, right? So it was non-traditional work. I was playing guitar on the subway. I was making only a couple $100s per month. And I was sharing an apartment with a bunch of people. So let's get into this, God, you know what it is? She lives in New York, unsurprisingly. A lot of these people who hold these ideas and are socialists are upper class. And I don't mean like the upper class, but they're not poor. They don't know what it's like to be poor, and they think they do. And they rag on people who try to resist things that could lead to mass poverty for everybody. So let's break down this here article. Yes, it is true that housing is unaffordable to minimum wage earners in every state of the country. If you're working a minimum wage job and you want your own one-bedroom apartment, it's not a living wage. And I agree, that's an issue. I don't know if the solution is raising the minimum wage or how we appropriately deal with this, because a lot of arguments on both sides. But I can say most people have roommates. And housing is affordable if you're renting a room in a house with other people, like most people do. Even people who live in New York City, who are making decent money, have roommates. Most people don't get an apartment to themselves. The average rent, I think, in New York is like $3,000. So yes, okay, you could be making $50,000 or $60,000 a year and not afford your own place in some circumstances in New York. You can find some one bedrooms for like $1,500, it's possible. So yeah, but then you're spending a ton of your money after taxes on your rent. So most people are gonna get roommates, and that's what you can do. Look, I don't like the fact that minimum wage is as low as it is, but there are arguments on the right that removing it would actually improve the economy, and arguments on the left that increasing it would improve the economy, and I don't want to get into that. What I want to say is, people use this misleading data, where they act like everyone is going to have their own home. Well, not at minimum wage. See, minimum wage is supposed to be for like young, unskilled workers. We do have a problem with unskilled labor. If you're coming to this country with no skills, unfortunately, no matter how old you are, you're probably going to get a lower paying job. But in most places, you're not going to get $7.25 an hour. You'll probably get like $10 an hour. If you're a young person, you're 16 or whatever, you work at McDonald's. You make close to minimum wage. But as you get older and learn more skills, you move up. And it should be how it works, but it doesn't. And it sucks. Again, I don't know what the solution is, but ultimately, the people who are making minimum wage, right, it's a problem that they can't afford housing, but they can live with roommates like most people. You know, I have roommates now. It is what it is. But let's look at how she says. She says, many Americans struggle to balance rent and daily living costs, but the burden is ever increasing for low-wage workers who have seen both a rise in rental housing costs and stagnant wages. The real issue here is not the minimum wage. It's a lack of upward mobility, skills, and the economy. There's too many people who are reliant on McDonald's and Starbucks and Burger King and Walgreens and these lower wage jobs to get by instead of developing skills and being productive in the economy. And part of me feels like if we incentivize people to not be entrepreneurs, to provide, to develop skills and provide them in the economy, we end up with low wage workers who can't afford to live in homes. There was a tweet I saw, and they said if you're okay with the minimum wage where it is, you acknowledge that these jobs need to be done, but you don't think they deserve a living wage to do it. The problem is socialism does not work, as we've seen with Venezuela and their ridiculous salaries, but the market dictates. And so look, we can't disable the market and try and create socialism because that makes everything worse. And if someone doesn't have the skills to contribute to society, then they get left behind. And ever increasingly, we're generating new social programs to alleviate that. But there's a fear, and I don't know if this is true, but there's a fear that incentivizing people not to work will lead to them not working. And here's why I think universal basic income doesn't work. Let's graduate from this and talk about universal basic income. How many people do you know want to be a rock star, want to be an actor, want to be a painter, want to be a singer, and they suck at all of those things? Yes. I know many people who would love nothing more than to be a famous musician making tons of money, and they're terrible musicians. Think about a world in which our government said, you know what? If we just give everyone a basic income, they'll do something productive. No, they'll do what they feel like doing, and sometimes people are bad at it. I know a lot of people who love skateboarding and would love nothing more to be a pro skateboarder, but they're plumbers. Why? Because they know how to be a plumber, a service that someone needs, and they're not that good at skateboarding. So they're not going to get sponsors, not going to make money. I know people who play music every day and write songs that no one will ever listen to because they're just not good. And if you said universal basic income to everybody, how many people would be like, well, I am good at carpentry, but I'd much rather play the guitar. We're gonna be inundated with people who play guitar, and then no one's gonna be building, things that we need. And there you have it. Anyway, let's get back to the core point. Venezuela is in a crisis, and people are eating their pets. They told the people to eat rabbits. That will kill you. You can't eat rabbits. They don't have enough nutrients and fat. It's called something like rabbit starvation. And this woman is trying to mock this idea by claiming that minimum wage is just not enough. Minimum wage in the United States makes you wealthier than many developed nations. And it's crazy to me that, look, I understand poverty is something we don't want to encourage. We want people to come out of poverty. But even an impoverished American is wealthy compared to the rest of the world. And these people are so stuck in this wealthy bubble of New York City. Look, obviously if you live in New York City and you're making, mid 5 figures, low 6 figures, you're going to be like, oh, how could someone live on $7.25 an hour? But that's the federal minimum wage, I'm pretty sure. Because in New York, it's higher than that. And if you work at a job in New York, you're going to be making 12 to 14, which is like double that. So, look, minimum wage, I don't know. The point is, 700, I would believe a Venezuelan would love to come here and work for minimum wage because it's 720 times higher than their minimum wage. Anyway, that's it for today. I gotta go. I am beat, but I will see you all tomorrow on the main channel. And yeah, thanks for hanging out.